$700 billion?
Yeah.
Make some percentage of that budget to check out the possible threat of things we don't understand.
I used to think that was a lot of money until I found out that Los Angeles spent $1 billion on the homeless every year. Their budget for the homeless
They got
is
a homeless budget. Okay.
$1 billion, and they're not doing shit.
All right.
So when I look at like the military getting $700 billion, is that what they get?
Yeah,
like,
plus or minus.
We need to give them more money.
You know,
clearly they need more money. Because if you can't fix the LA homeless situation with $1 billion, how are you going to protect us with $700 billion?
Right. Yeah, who's running what? Exactly. I got in trouble this past February when the electricity went out in Texas and it was cold. Just a couple of months ago.
What did you say?
What I say? I tweeted. I said, what did I say? I say, okay, right now, NASA landed a rover on Mars with a helicopter, and this is at 120 million miles away, controlling it, and it's on Mars where it's 100 degrees below zero. Meanwhile, Texas, where it's cold, has no electricity. So all I said was, maybe NASA, instead of politicians, should run Texas.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Some people just lost their mind.
But that's just because the power was out and people were freaking out already.
Plus, I don't do what you advised me the last time what post and drop. What's the phrase?
Post and ghost.
Post and ghost.
Yeah.
No, I always peek at what people are saying. I want to know.
You are too popular. When you're too popular, people get mad at you.
Oh, you know?
Yeah.
That's deep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. But if enough people are angry and upset at their own lives, and they just decide they're going to attack Neil deGrasse Tyson because he makes a poignant point.
I try to have you smile about it a little. I mean, and plus, Texas is no stranger to NASA. NASA, Texas.
Houston, we have a problem.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, come on.
That was not addressed to the governor. It was addressed to NASA headquarters.
Yeah, people are just too easy to get upset. And also, you're just dealing with the numbers are just unmanageable of people online.
Welcome to the Jamaica Vibes Entertainment TV Weekend Edition. And this weekend we're featuring none other than Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, speaking of various subject matters that he has covered throughout his lifetime and stuff like that. And I want you to listen to everything he's saying as he gives you the truth, nothing but the truth, and 100% of the truth. So with that said, let's continue with the video.
That there's a heaven, that they're going somewhere, that there's an afterlife. How could anyone know that?
No,
that boggles my mind.
They can believe they know.
Well, but belief is, I could believe that it's raining,
well,
but
that's
it
right.
ain't.
Well, this is the difference between believing something and using the methods and tools of science to establish what is objectively true. And what is objectively true is something that is true outside of your belief system. That's what science is.
Facts and belief. I know the religious people believe, the scientist says prove. What do you believe? What do you think happens when we die?
Well, so I can make some unassailable statements about what happens when you die. So you spend your life eating food. Food has a calorie content, and calorie is a source of energy. Calorie is a unit of energy. You bring it in, and then the energy is available for you to maintain your body temperature at nearly 100 degrees. It's 98.6. How do you keep something at 100 degrees when nothing else around you is? You're burning energy to sustain that. Because biologically, we need to be at that temperature to function. Okay? You also need energy to walk and to move. That's why you eat food. The moment you die, what happens? You don't maintain the energy. Your temperature drops. How far does it drop? To room temperature. At a funeral, in the casket, if you touch the hand of the person in the casket, your first thought is, the body's cold. No, it's not. It's room temperature. But it's cold compared to 100 degrees. They're no longer burning this energy. Okay, so now, every one of your molecules has energy within it. If you get cremated, that energy gets released in the form of heat. And you heat the air, and that air radiates to space. You get buried, which is how I want my body to be disposed of. Bury me. bury me. Because you know why? I don't want the energy content of my body to just get radiated out into space of no use to anybody. Put me in the ground. Let the worms, microbes come in and out of my body. And the energy content of my body that I had assembled over my lifetime, consuming the flora and fauna of this earth, my body then returns to them. And thus is the cycle of life. I know that's going to happen because you can measure where the energy goes. And that's how I want to go out. Me?
Creator?
So I'm, the more I look at the universe, just the less convinced I am that there is something benevolent going on. So if your concept of a creator is someone who's all powerful and all good, that's not an uncommon pairing of powers that you might ascribe to a creator. All powerful and all good afflict Earth and life on Earth. Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, disease, pestilence, congenital birth defects. You look at this list of ways that life is made miserable on Earth by natural causes. And I just ask, how do you deal with that? So philosophers rose up and said, if there is a God, God is either not all powerful or not all good. I have no problems if, as we probe the origins of things, we bump up into the bearded man. If that shows up, we're good to go. Okay? Not a problem. There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively. Because you believe something in the absence of evidence.
So here's my question to you. When it comes to religion, is it about the faith or is it about the evidence? Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about this question. Now let's continue.
I don't know if they ran out of pharaohs to build pyramids to, or they ran out of money. One day they stopped. Do you know the pyramid, the top of the tallest pyramid? Do you know what year we built something taller than that pyramid after that pyramid was built? It was in the Paris Expo. The Eiffel Tower was the first object we ever built as a species taller than the pyramids. So just because you're doing something in one period of time doesn't mean it will continue forever. In fact, one of my great fears is that you end up taking it for granted. I see the depth to which he was connected to the operations of nature. There is no doubt about it. The man discovered the laws of gravity by sitting there. Okay, it's rumored that he sat under the apple tree, but what is certain is that he knew in the same field of view, he saw an apple drop and the moon in orbit around the earth. Okay, he sees the two of them. One is falling to the ground and the other is like up there in space. He connects the two and suggests that the same force of gravity is operating on both of them. They're both falling towards Earth. He hypothesizes, well, how's that possible? Because I can drop this camera on the ground, it would fall. Okay? But if it's in orbit, it's not falling. But it is falling. It is. If you're in orbit, you are falling towards Earth. He suggested, suppose you had a hill and you sort of fire a cannonball. Not very fast. It would just sort of kind of fall, right? Fire it a little faster. It goes farther before it hits the ground, doesn't it? Even faster, it'll go even farther. Now, wait a minute, Earth is curved. So if you keep this up, this thing is coming around the backside of the Earth. So he asked himself, there must be a speed sufficiently high so that that cannonball comes right back to the cannon. And all you have to do at that point is duck. And the cannonball ought to just slide on by and stay in orbit. The fact is the cannonball is falling every moment it's there. The difference is it's going sideways so fast that the amount that it has fallen is the same amount that the Earth's surface has curved away from it. That is the speed that gets you orbit. He figures this out. And that's why the moon is behaving the same way the apple is. The apple just doesn't happen to have sideways motion to bring it someplace other than right below.
If you're enjoying this video with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, then please give this video a thumbs up And leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Now let's get back to the video.
Ecstatic.
Could you explain how complicated it is to get something like that?
Yeah, so one of the great challenges that we face is how do you put a telescope in orbit that's bigger than the rocket that's going to launch it? Is that even possible? And the Hubble telescope, do you know what set the size of that? 94-inch diameter mirror. That's the biggest mirror you could fit in the payload of the space shuttle. Oh. That's what set the size of that telescope. Big as it was, we would have made it bigger if the space shuttle were bigger. Now, I don't know if you've seen the Hubble telescope. There's a replica of it at the Air and Space Museum.
Let's look at a photo of it.
And it's there hanging from the ceiling, but if you want to know how, it's about the size of a Greyhound bus. So the space shuttle deployed a Greyhound bus into orbit, which is the Hubble Space Telescope. And the value of the Hubble was that you could update it with servicing missions, and it was serviced many times. And as a result, it lived within our culture for 3 decades. There are people who came of age only ever knowing the majesty of the universe as delivered to you by the Hubble telescope. 30 years worth of this. Think about it. Most other telescopes, they put into orbit and they have a 5-year mission and then they come down. So they don't have a chance to get inside you, to become something that you you got a nice visual there. So that's the Hubble telescope on the left, which every year I post a tweet at the end of the Stanley Cup, and I say, the Stanley Cup and the Hubble telescope had the same designer.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. No, just look at the thing.
Oh.
It looks like the Stanley Cup.
A little bit.
Just a lot.
I wouldn't confuse the two if they were in a room together.
So here's the thing. So notice the Hubble telescope, its diameter is the spherical shape that fits in the spherical payload of the space shuttle. So now we want to put a bigger telescope into orbit. How do you do that? And so this is where you need engineers, clever engineers. We say, here's a rocket, one of the most powerful rockets we can use, but the fairing, that's the place where you hold the payload, it can only be so big. And they say, all right, why don't we fold the telescope? Now, how are you going to fold the mirror? Oh, you turn the mirror into segments, hexagons. Hexagons, one of only 3 shapes that can tile a surface: a square, a triangle, and a hexagon. No other shape can do this. So, well, you can have other irregular shapes that can match up. You can tessellate, what it's called. But if you have what's called a regular polygon, so here in the image there, what you can see is all of the mirror segments. Those fold into a narrow structure along with the unfurling solar panels as well as the heat shields. Notice it was made at Northrop Grumman. By the way, Grumman has a long history in helping NASA put stuff in space. The LEM, Lunar Excursion Module, remember that? The thing that landed on the moon? That was designed and built in Bethpage, Long Island at Grumman. And so this is, and you go to Bethpage today, people still stand tall because they had aunts and uncles who worked on that project. Space is a force of nature unto itself in our sense of pride, in our sense of achievement, and our sense of what operates on civilization to take us into the future, lest we continue to regress and move back into the cave in which we came. There it is, all folded up in the image we now see for those who are watching this. And you slip that into a fairing, and then you launch it 1,000,000 miles from Earth, opposite the sun from Earth. And it unfurls like petals of a flower.
Is there an animation of how that goes down?
Yeah, they have slow-mo animation. Sure, he can find it. And it's the deployment, how it deployed as it was on its way to its location, which is one of the Lagrangian points in orbit. For every 2 objects that orbit each other, there are 5 Lagrangian points. So here we are unfolding. So there we have solar panels coming out the side, and there's the communication antenna, and it has a unique set of baffles that shield it from sunlight so that the mirror and the detector can be very, very cold because it's specially tuned to observe infrared that comes to us from space. And infrared, as you may know, we normally associate it with heat. Well, how am I going to detect something that's very, very cold in space if my detector is hotter than what I'm trying to detect? You can't, there's no way to see something that is warmer than the temperature of your detector. So your detector has to be very cold. Extremely cold. So these are the baffles, and there are many, many layers. So that when sunlight hits one layer, that layer absorbs it and re-radiates it in both directions, forward and back. So there's less that goes to the next layer. So then the next layer re-radiates it, and by the time it gets to the fourth layer, hardly anything goes towards the telescope. And so it's insulated, and it drops to deep space cold temperatures. And it's literally where the sun don't shine right now.
Now, in this next video clipping, Neil is going to speak on why he doesn't believe in God. And how he explained it is quite interesting. So I want you to take a listen.
Yeah, so the more I look at the universe, just the less convinced I am that there is something benevolent going on. So if your concept of a creator is someone who's all powerful and all good, that's not an uncommon pairing of powers that you might ascribe to a creator. All powerful and all good. And I look at disasters that afflict Earth and life on Earth. Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, disease, pestilence, congenital birth defects. You look at this list of ways that life is made miserable on Earth by natural causes. And I just ask, how do you deal with that? So philosophers rose up and said, if there is a God, God is either not all powerful or not all good. I have no problems if, as we probe the origins of things, we bump up into the bearded man. If that shows up, we're good to go. Okay? Not a problem. There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively. Because you believe something in the absence of evidence. That's what it is. That's why it's called faith. Otherwise, we would call all religions evidence. But we don't, for exactly that reason. So I'm given what everyone describes to be the properties that would be expressed by an all-powerful being in the gods that they worship. I look for that in the universe and I don't find it. So I remain unconvinced. But if you've got some good evidence, bring it, bring it, bring it, okay? And so I don't lead with that information because what I believe should be irrelevant to anyone. It's not about me. It's about the real world. The nation would claim to be religious, and you define this in a way that's unambiguous. You don't say, well, do you go to church every Sunday? You don't ask that question. Plenty of people go to church who are not religious. They go to get a date or so. They go for the cupcakes or something. They don't go to be spiritually enlightened. So you ask a different question. You say, is there a God that listens to your prayers? If you answer yes to that, you're religious by anybody's definition, because your understanding of a deity is that that deity is monitoring your daily affairs. So that's unambiguous. This number's dropped in the last couple of years, but it's about 90%. Turns out if you go to college and get an advanced degree, a master's or a doctorate, where these are degrees where you actually question the state of existing knowledge. The undergraduate degree doesn't really do that. You're learning from textbooks that are written by somebody else. Your doctrines are already there. The higher degrees imply that you are questioning the very fabric of the knowledge you had previously learned. Among that community, it's 60%. It has dropped. Well, that's interesting. Let's keep going. How about scientists? of all stripes. So biologists, chemists, let's include engineers as well. People who have formal scientific training, mathematicians as well. Okay, what happens next? Drops to 40%. Now, if you look at this number, it looks like, wow, so scientists, the public is 90%, scientists are 40%. No, the drop is not that significant because every scientist has an advanced degree. So in fact, the drop is not from 90 to 40, the drop is from 60 to 40. So becoming a scientist is not as big an effect on whether you're religious as you might otherwise think. Most of the drop comes because you're educated beyond the level of college. So that's 40%. So now you go to elite scientists, members of the National Academy, highly accomplished subset among scientists, the number drops to 7%. There was a headline in Nature, the British journal Nature, which said after this study was released, 93% of elite scientists reject God. So that was supposed to be a shocking headline. And I look at that and I said, that's not even interesting. That was the trend line anyway. What's more interesting, which was not the headline, is that 7% of elite scientists pray to a God. Isn't that a more interesting fact to you? Isn't that kind of interesting? The most accomplished scientists in the world, in that community, 7% of them still pray to a personal God. I think that is deserving of more study than the 93% who don't. Because something's going on there. We don't know what. And I have confronted people on this. I would say, to the most sort of vociferous in the atheist community, I would say, you're beating the public over the head, telling them, why are you doing it? And I'm thinking, before you beat the public, why don't you beat them over the head, okay? No, I'm just saying, if you're gonna rank, if you just, because you understand that first, because if you can't convert that 7%, you've got no hope in the general public. That's all I'm saying. This is among the ranks of the scientifically educated. Now, philosophers basically invented atheism. And if you do this, if you check the statistic for philosophers, it's below 1%. There are no the only religious philosophers they're like theologian philosophers, all right? If you subtract the theologic philosophers, this number is essentially zero, all right? So they're basically birthed atheism, the philosophers. And there's this talk, I don't know here in Australia, does the Bible in the public school class or not? No, is it by law or is it just by tradition? Is it by law? Okay, so in America there's this understanding that the state and the church are separate. And by and large that's been honored for most of the history of the country, by and large. And has no religion. The state is indifferent to what religion you might have. So that means there's no authority over you that's going to tell you who and what to worship. And that's a state that we all take for granted, but so many places in the world that is not true. Well, there's a case in New Jersey where a middle school kid was lectured to by the history teacher in a public school, and the history teacher said, if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you are going to hell. There's a little Muslim girl there, said you are already damned to hell. First point. Second, that Noah had dinosaurs on his ark. Third point he made is that Big Bang and evolution are just theories and you can take them or leave them. So, I don't, like I said, I don't get into these. I just don't. We got people who do this. We've got the four horsemen. We got our boy here who's coming up after. We got people who fight this stuff. I'm not one of those, really. I'm doing this because, like, I know you're all. This is the bone I'm throwing you, but I don't do this. So, but then I thought about it and I said, I have an op-ed. a letter to the editor on this that I can write. And I left out the part about Jesus. I left that out. Because If that's how he feels, he wants you to be Christian, that's okay, fine. I left that out. I went to the rest of what he said. And this was my letter, as it appeared in the New York Times. People cited violation of the First Amendment when a New Jersey, that's a separation of church and state, essentially. New Jersey school teacher asserted that evolution and the Big Bang are not scientific and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs. The case is not about the need to separate church and state. It's about the need to separate ignorant, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers. That's the problem. If he wants to believe Jesus is his savior, that's not synonymous with being scientifically illiterate, because 40% of American scientists pray to a personal God. What is identical with being scientifically literate is that if Noah was a human being, he did not have dinosaurs on his ark, because humans and dinosaurs did not coexist, all right? Every one of those scientists knows that, even the 40% who pray to God. So this is how I've sort of split the kingdom there. Then you have a planet that is in love with life.
Why does religion have such a persistent hold on human thought despite all that we know of science?
Yeah, I think there are several ways one can address that question. Let me address it in a consider not long ago when so much of the Western world was the state was the religion. And we have actually moved quite a distance from that compared with 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, the era of the Inquisition and this sort of thing. And so to say that it has such a grip, it has a fraction of the grip that it once did on the operations of human conduct and of society. So the real question is, if implicit in that is, given what we know of science, why would religion still have any grip at all? Not just why does it still have a big grip? Because it's not a big grip when you look in the developed world. So, in fact, most of Europe are just there are whole countries where religion has essentially disappeared entirely, and the countries are not full of violence, and it's just the assumption that you have to be religious to be moral is a false one. It's empirically false because you just look around in places where that's the case. So that's one fact. And pull away from that a little, there's plenty of what goes on in religious texts that has tremendous value to how to think about life and how to treat one another. In fact, Jefferson created what was essentially what you can think of as Thomas Jefferson, the Jefferson Bible. I don't know if you ever heard of this. He went through the Bible, and I think both the Old and the New Testaments, and he crossed off everything that was sort of mythical, magical, things that clearly violated known laws of nature, and kept the rest, and said, here is the stuff of the Bible that should have value to any modern person going forward. If you look at people who are religious today, who are not in conflict with science, they have viewed their religious text as a spiritual, something that gives them spiritual support, not as a science textbook. The conflict in society is when you have those who are still religious, who want to use their religious text as their access point to understanding the natural world, and persistent efforts of the past to make that happen have just simply failed. The Bible does not work as a science textbook. In fact, Galileo knew this, and he himself was a religious man. He's famously quoted as saying, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. So on that scale, the conflict comes about when that subset of the religious community feels threatened by scientific discoveries that are different from how they interpret what the natural world should be in the Bible.
I think it's that point where you get to the concept of the God of the gaps. You go, we do not understand this, you know, science takes us so far, but we don't understand anything beyond that, therefore, that's God. The stuff that we don't get, that's God. And the trouble with that is the moment that you actually go, no, we do understand that now. The point where you go, well, the rainbow actually, it's an optical effect. It's not something magic that gets put up in the sky to memorialize the flood.
Plus, did you know that everyone sees a unique rainbow?
No.
That's right. The rainbow is an optical effect for the person who sees it. So if you stand 10 feet to my left, you see a different rainbow than I see. It's a remarkable, fun fact about rainbows.
My favorite fun fact about rainbows is the fact that they were originally believed to have 6 color bands, but that Newton added indigo and violet.
Newton liked
his 7.
The number 7. He had the mystical feeling for the number 7. Throws in indigo that no one else sees.
Yeah, nobody. I mean, hands up here. Who actually goes indigo, violet? There's the indigo. You just go purple.
Yeah, exactly.
Go blue, purple. But
so another thing about the rainbow, because each rainbow is unique to the viewer, it can only be a rainbow that is exactly face-on to you. You've never seen a rainbow that was like at an oblique angle. Think about it. They're exactly hemispherical in front of you. That's why you can never get to the base of the rainbow. Because that would mean your perspective on it would change. That's what makes it a good place to hide the gold. Okay? In case you didn't know. All right.
Are you outing yourself here as an unbeliever in leprechauns? People have been burned at stakes?
Indeed am. And another thing, you mentioned the God of the gaps. In a free society, a free pluralistic society, where the freedom of the expression of religion is constitutionally protected, which is a fundamental part of why America was so attractive to immigrants from around the world, whose religious differences were not being supported in their hometown. I will never be one to tell you what you should believe or what you should not believe. What I will say is that if you want to say that where we don't understand things, that's where God rests, that's where God operates, the God of the gaps argument, because I get asked that all the time. What was around before the universe? I don't know. Must have been something, God. So they got to stick in God where we're not there yet. And I just say, we got top people working on that. It's a current frontier. We're not there yet. And given the history of the moving frontier, where people had previously said, well, God must be operating, we're long past that. Those explanations have come. And so there's no compelling reason to say God did it and then sort of give up and go on to the next problem. My issue with the God of the gaps is that if you feel that way, you should not be writing the science curriculum of a classroom. Okay? That's all. Okay? Because if you do, you are undermining the very process of what science is all about. Because the God of the gaps principle is it's a philosophy of ignorance, whereas science is a philosophy of discovery. And that's an important distinction between the two. And if you remove that foundation for what builds science, you are undermining the capacity of your culture, of your nation, to compete technologically in the 21st century.